Our first speaker today is Dave Schaller from the NACFE, the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. And if you're not, if you haven't had a chance to talk to Dave, you're in for a treat. And if you're not familiar with the NACFE, you're in for a double treat. It's an amazing resource. And I knew very little about it. I'll let you read the program in terms of Dave's background. I knew very little about it until Jim Sharkey said, "Oh, you're going to have this deal in Fort Wayne? Well, why don't you get in touch with the guys over at the NACFE, because they're based in Fort Wayne." I had no idea. And that's how I got in touch with Dave. And I have to thank you, Dave, because he has been instrumental and helpful in the last 6 months as we've been going through this planning process in offering ideas and suggestion and support. And without any further ado, and thank you very much, Dave Schaller.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to all the Strict team. I really appreciate this opportunity to get in front of you. As an industry nonprofit group, I have a terribly difficult time getting in front of a lot of your folks because when I try to do cold calls, I know what a fleet manager job's like. I've spent over 3 decades in the industry, 27 years with a major OEM. So when I call up and say, "I'd like to talk to you for just a couple minutes, what are you trying to sell me?" I don't sell anything. "Oh, well, you got a service. What's it going to cost me?" "Our services are free." "Well, then it can't be worth anything. Thank you, bye." Click. And I've had that actual conversation. So this is an enormous opportunity for me to get in front. How many of you are already familiar with NACFE? Cool, that's better than I normally get in a room, so I got a big head start here. Appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming to Fort Wayne. I do a lot of these things. I've never done one where I get to sleep in my home bed at night, so it's an opportunity. We are going to talk today on predominantly trailers. I'll touch a little bit on tractors. We do the whole Class 8 industry, long haul, regional haul. I'm going to talk to you about who NACFE is, why you'd use us, the reports we put out, the fleet fuel study that we do every year, just touch on some greenhouse gas, some future techs, and the Run on Less demonstration we've got up. And if I go fast enough, I'm going to leave you some time so we can have some conversation because I love doing Q&A. We as a nonprofit organization are dedicated to doubling the freight efficiency in this country. Well, how the heck are you going to do that, Dave? Well, it's a real challenge in our industry to get fleets to adopt the types of technologies that come out until they're confident in it. If you're part of the just-in-time system, you can't afford to have a truck go down, or you deliver chicks or poultry. There's a lot of criticality in what the truck industry does, and we need to improve that quality of information flow on what works, what doesn't work, and highlight those successful adoptions. So our group was formed as NACFE. And about 2-3 years ago, we had the Carbon War Room come and knock on our door. I didn't know the Carbon War Room. You probably don't know the Carbon War Room. It's Sir Richard Branson's environmental organization. We'd like to team up with you, but we're not an environmental organization. We help fleets cut their fuel expenses. That's what we're all about. But every time you don't burn a gallon of diesel fuel, that's carbon not going into the environment. We think you're an environmental organization. Can we come on board? Well, you don't turn down an eccentric billionaire. So now not only do we have industry sponsors, we have OEMs that sponsor us, suppliers that sponsor us, dealer networks that sponsor us. We even have fleets that help sponsor us. So we've got a wide industry base of support, and our information's on truckingefficiency.org now. When you look at this chart, we are not into the diesel price forecasting. There are people out there that specialize in that. That's not us. We have this to show you when you think about the life cycle of a tractor. On our board of directors, we have Schneider that turns around tractors pretty quickly. We have UPS that keeps them until they die. So we have both extents of that blue bar right on our own board of directors. So anywhere between 2 to 3 years in a really short case to 15 years for a life cycle. And look what happened to that price of diesel fuel in that time period. We show you that so you think about what's going to happen to the price of diesel fuel 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, because the trailer you're specifying today, the diesel fuel price is not going to be the same 15 years from now. I can't tell you whether it's going to be a hurricane, an earthquake, a volcano, a political situation like Venezuela. There will be disruptions in the fuel prices. There are a lot of other disruptors we'll talk about later. Things are going to change. You've got to specify carefully. So how would you use this information? As I go through the rest of the presentation, I challenge you to think about, for your particular business, whether you're a fleet, a dealership, whatnot, what has Dave and NACFE got that could help educate my staff? I've got somebody in a new position where they're just not familiar with the terminology. Or even better yet, one of the best things we've found is unbiased information for fleets. If you're a supplier, a dealer, I'm going to show you a slide on who they trust and how much they trust. We're an independent third party. Use our information to your advantage. I'm going to talk to you about competitive specification benchmarking. I'm going to give you a tool that's going to make your life really easy. I want you to boost the value of your marketing materials. If we're saying the same thing you're saying, use our information so it doesn't all sound like your marketing spin. Hey, I've got independent stuff that supports what I'm saying. And to help you get into greenhouse gas phase 2. And here's that infamous graph. The very first report NACFE ever got involved with was with ICCT, and they went out and said, what are the barriers to adopting new technologies in the freight industry? Well, I hate to tell you, 27 years with an OEM, I'm kind of embarrassed because my respectability is just about in the tank down there with EPA SmartWay in terms of what they believe for information. Now I'm with a third-party organization. I'm right behind the fleet's own data in terms of believability, where they get information. So as you're representing a supplier, you're representing your dealership, think about, have they got information that can help me? Because what the study says is they'll believe a third party before they believe other things. When we talk about technology adoption, our industry is so specialized, and that is Strick's business, is specialization, that the volumes are very low. And the things that work, the volumes need to come up so you get better tooling, get lower costs, get it into the industry. And we struggle with this curve of when will fleets adopt, and they don't adopt easily or quickly, true? So we work on what's working and what's not working to help the industry learn more about that. One of the ways we do that is through confidence reports. We put out reports on various different subjects. These are all the confidence reports we already have published that are sitting out. For those of you that are my age as a baby boomer, if you were like me and didn't like reading that whole textbook in college or high school, you read the Cliff Notes, right? You just wanted the good stuff. Well, we try to go through and meet with all the fleets, the suppliers, the OEM, and get out the good stuff. Tell you about the pros and the cons, what's working, what the problems are, what to watch out for. So there are a lot of different things on here. Some of them are more trailer related, and I'm going to touch on those things. We are starting to change. The blue surrounded ones are all existing technologies, things that are out there, have been out there a while. The red ones, we've started looking and moving toward emerging areas. What are new things in the industry that you might be interested in? And I want you to think about this today. If there's something we don't have covered, I'd love for you to challenge us. Hey, Dave, I wish you'd look into this. Some of the things are starting to change so fast. There's 2 green ones on there, 6x2 axles and downspeeding. The technologies are changing. We're going back and we have to rewrite and update our reports because lift axles are becoming predominant in 6x2 tractors. Talk about a way to get low rolling resistance tires, lift some of them off the ground when you don't have that kind of weight requirement. So those kinds of things are changing our industry. As an example, tire pressure systems. Got a big smile out of Jim here. I know he and others in this room are probably intimately familiar with this. I've already learned more about tire pressure systems just from hanging around you folks again this week, and I've got notes to go back and say we need updates in our tire system. But we took all the different things that are out there in the industry and sorted them into categories of tire pressure monitoring, things that strictly look at tire pressure, dual tire pressure balancers, automatic tire inflation systems, central tire inflation systems like military and some extreme off-roader use, other passive containment measures. So we look at all these things and help the industry understand what's out there and what they might want to adopt, what's appropriate for their situation. And most importantly, where and whenever we can, we provide you financial tools to figure out return on investment. Is it good for your organization? Will it meet your payback time periods? Lightweighting. Composites, aluminum, other things. Sometimes composites are lighter weight, sometimes they're heavier weight. So we get into these different kind of categories. And in our industry, not everybody values everything the same way. The same truck and trailer are not appropriate for everyone to use. That's why you do specialized equipment. We know that there are different categories of folks out there in terms of lightweighting. We identify them, talk about them, figure out values, talk about the trends and what's happening in the industry. What can help you cut the weight when your customer says, I'm trying to get more payload on there? What can we do together to figure out how to get more weight off the tractor and trailer, get more payload into there? We set out, it's probably a year and a half ago, to do some aerodynamic work. And we're going to write a report on aerodynamics, and pretty quickly figured out there's tractor aerodynamics and trailer aerodynamics, and there's a whole lot of different things to talk about. So we split it in two. And then we started getting into understanding how you talk about it and said, no, we got to have a whole other third report. So we have a report merely on determining efficiency, and I'm not going to spend much time on this because we've got a tremendous board of folks that know much more about aerodynamics than I can ever hope to. What we learned as we put together the report, we hired another early retiree like myself who had been the lead aerodynamicist at Peterbilt to help us put this report together. If we were the pharmaceutical industry, you know, at the end of every advertisement they have to talk about the disclaimers, thanks. Can you imagine in the truck industry, if we had to read off the variables to consider down there at the bottom, your results may vary depending on ambient temperature, rain, snow, wind, road conditions, eye angles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of things that affect your fuel economy. This report talks to you about understanding computational fluid dynamics, doing things on the computer versus doing things in the wind tunnel versus coast down tests versus on-road testing or the real world. How does it compare in a composite fleet of different situations? So all those things are important, and they provide different reports, and they are not going to match. There are a lot of variables, and the report talks about that. I want you to be comfortable with a range of numbers, because it's not going to be a specific one number. It's not going to be 2.153%. Your results will vary. We have a separate report entirely on trailer aerodynamics. So I expect this is going to be the most popular report possibly coming out of this group as to what's going on in the trailer world. You know, skirts are becoming quite common now. There are a lot of different things going on in the trailer tails area. And again, since we got a panel coming up to talk about this, I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail. Down in the lower right-hand corner is one of our confidence grids. Every single report has a confidence grid to talk about the different things we looked at. Are they ready for prime time? Or do we say maybe you want to try some right now, that they're worthy of testing? Or we might in some cases say, I'd hold off. Talk to them about development. There's some other challenges yet. I troll a lot of Facebook groups dedicated to high mileage folks. There are honestly owner-operator groups out on Facebook dedicated to high MPG folks. I saw that picture on there one day. Gives you an idea how strong trailer tails are, that somebody left them extended and backed through the door and blew it clean off its tracks. It highlights development in new systems. The very first trailer tails came out, they were not self-deploying. The second generation came out, they were self-deploying, but they don't self-stow yet. So we have industry issues like doors laying on the ground. We now have systems coming out, like I believe it's the Wabco system pictured there, that they automatically deploy and stow. So there are continuous advancements, and these technologies will continue to improve over time. I also realized from our tour yesterday there's a heck of a lot of roll-up doors on strict trailers, so this couldn't possibly apply yet. So there will be other answers that are more appropriate for those customers. And taking aerodynamics one step farther, how many of you are not familiar with the term platooning? I run into groups once in a while, and platooning, are you familiar with NASCAR and racing? Drafting, thank you, perfect. Race cars are a lot more fuel efficient when they're in each other's wake and close enough so they're not in the dirty air, they're in the clean air right behind. Platooning is a whole nother report we've put out on emerging technologies. It's already coming on board. One of the other things we do as a third party is we hire out and become a third party witness to testing. We were the people that got to go witness Peloton's very first on-highway test. pretty excited when the boss calls up and says, you won't believe what I just witnessed. The rear tractor trailer gained 10% fuel economy by platooning. But the one a lot of people can't get their heads around is the lead tractor gained 4.5% because the wake was now clean coming off of their trailer. With all the different things we look at, you have to put several things together to hope to come up with 4.5 to 10% type numbers. So do we think this is going to happen? Very definitely. Are there industry challenges in getting there? Of course there are. Right now, all the OEMs are able to show that they can match up with another one of their OEM's tractors, and the two of them will electronically talk. The braking in the second vehicle will be faster than a human driver could ever touch the brakes. So there are a lot of cool things happening there. But they need to be able to talk to other folks, and you need to find other folks that can platoon before you'll get the efficiency. You need to have partners. So I know there are a few unique fleets out there that travel together that could benefit immediately, but it's going to take a while for our industry to see the full benefit of platooning. The one report I expect that will get downloaded more than anything else here today is the one we get attention for. It's our annual fleet fuel study. This is our 5th year last year of doing this, and we go out and try to figure out, of all the different types of technologies that are out there, what has already been embraced, what's been looked at and kind of, oh, wow, I didn't anticipate those problems. So we ask fleets what they've bought, and are you still buying them? Are they delivering fuel economy? To give you a little better idea, those are the fleets that volunteered to go back 10 years in their buying cycle and tell us year by year which of our nearly 70 technologies did you buy that year. That allows us to put all these different fleets together in a composite report and study trends on usage. So it's one of the big things we can bring to the industry is showing you what's actually happening. Hopefully you can find at least 1 or 2 fleets on there that you say, yeah, that's a well-run organization. I'm interested in what Dave's got to say here. There are the trends. I showed you the adoption curve before. That's a little tough to understand. I'll break it down for you, but to give you an idea, we look at all these different things. One of the things I got into most recently, you'll notice in our industry we don't change quickly. There's nothing that's gone from 0 to 100% even over the decade of information we have. So it takes a while for technologies to be fully embraced. And most technologies will never see 100% because they're not right for everyone, or there are competing technologies, so any one might never get to 100%. When we break it into more reasonable data for you, something usable, here from, if you start on the left-hand side on the top, it's operational practices, your preventative maintenance and whatnot. Below that's tractor aerodynamics, and you'll see that is way up there now. Powertrain is coming up, tires, rolling resistance, idle reduction, the red lines chassis. The one that probably catches your attention because specifically trailers is trailer aerodynamics. Folks have been working on trailer skirts. I've talked to folks that worked on them for over a decade before they became adopted with any kind of regularity. And look at the curve coming up quickly from 2008, 2009 time frame, and the fleets we're talking to, what they have in their fleet now. What was really intriguing last year, the black line is the cost of diesel fuel over that time period that we've been taking surveys. And obviously the price of diesel fuel climbed dramatically, but the last 2 years the price of diesel fuel has gone down in that black line. So how did the fleets respond? The group adoption rate didn't plateau, it went up. So there's fleets still looking, how can I cut my fuel costs? I need more money. I need money for our facilities, our equipment. I need money for driver recruiting, driver retention. If you can help save my fuel costs, I can put the money somewhere else. So it's interesting to see that that's happening in the industry. And to my earlier point, the green numbers over on the right for adoption percentages, it doesn't make sense for anyone to ever adopt 100% of these technologies. One of the reasons I pull out my hair is I'll look through all this survey information as we do reports. When we did idle reduction, we had owner-operators tell us they had a diesel APU, a battery HVAC system, a start-stop system, et cetera. There's no reason you would ever put all those idle control systems on one truck. So sometimes we get data back that just doesn't make sense. So it doesn't make sense for anyone to ever have 100% of these technologies. To give you a feeling for what we learned about where the industry is at for fuel economy, looking at nationwide numbers, if you use the Federal Highway Administration numbers that the U.S. government puts out, they're about a year behind. The most recent we have is 2014 at 5.83 miles per gallon as a whole industry, all Class 8 trucks. But if you look at the fleets we deal with, is the blue line, they have gone from low to mid 6 miles per gallon. They've crashed over the 7 mile per gallon, and that's their fleet average. The new trucks are well above 7 miles per gallon now. The red line is what we think the line would look like had these fleets that we're surveying not adopted these technologies, a business as usual case, that the emissions and whatnot cut into their fuel economy, and as we've gotten better at after-treatment systems and other things, it's on the rebound. The cool part is that what we're seeing is pretty much year over year, we're seeing about a 3% fuel economy improvement in vehicles going out. And a way to think about that is you're dealing with your customer base, multiply that 3% by how many years in their trade cycle, and they're quite likely looking at a 15, 16% improvement if they're a typical 4-year user of a tractor. So that's a pretty phenomenal gain, getting rid of the old and buying into the new. What I do want to show you today, how many of you would scratch your head and wonder if your boss said, Dave, I'd like you to tell me where we stand versus all fleets that we compete with. How am I going to do that? I can't exactly call up my competitors and go, would you give me this specification, please? We've taken their information and stripped off the fleet names and labeled them A through O up there and put together a spreadsheet for you. This is also downloadable off truckingefficiency.org. The blank column there before the colors is meant for you to be able to fill in your fleet information. If you're a dealership, would you love to be able to value add to your customer base? You probably know them well enough. You could, if you wanted to strip out all the tractor things and just go into the trailer things, I'm guessing that in 15 minutes, 30 minutes tops, you could fill in all their information and walk in and say, I've been curious. Why are you not adopting these two things up on top, but you're investing money in things down below that other fleets, I can't show you the full list, it's too long. If you want to see this close up, I got a pair of copies here. Raise your hand and I'll give you a copy to stare at while I'm presenting the rest of the thing today. That this is all available to you to provide value to yourselves, your dealerships, your customers. I'm going to transition a little bit into greenhouse gas. I want to touch on it. ICCT that I mentioned previously has put out this chart to help show visually. There are many stages that are laid out in the 5,000 to 7,000 pages of documentation that they've put together in greenhouse gas phase 2, that there will be changes in tractor and trailer regs over a period of quite a few years here. If all this stands up and the federal government doesn't throw it away, it'd be interesting to see what happens, but I believe we're getting real close to the date where they can't do that anymore. So when we look at this, one of the things that is, it's really not the fleet's challenge. The compliance relies with the truck, trailer, and engine builders to comply with these regulations, to use the GEM model, the greenhouse gas emissions model. Every vehicle they're selling is going through there to help put together their fuel economy score, so it's different than the NACFE standards for automobiles. When they put out the proposed notice of proposed rulemaking, diesel was at about $4 a gallon. Diesel fuel prices fell, the return on investments changed dramatically, so they were forced to rewrite a lot of the things between the proposed and the final, trying to get to a 2-year payback. One of the things we can do is look at the adoption rates that lead into those new greenhouse gas levels. So I'm going to show you a couple slides here just to give you a taste. I'll let you go download the report if you find this real interesting. On the left-hand side, on the next couple slides, will be our history. We've got 10 years. Actually, we've done the report for 5 years, so we got 14 years worth of fleet data on the left-hand side, and the greenhouse gas phase 2 regulations, first for trailers starting in 2018 and then tractors in 2021. I'll start on the tractor side because it's probably one of the areas that's changing the fastest in our industry right now in transmissions. I raised 2 millennials, they wouldn't have an idea what to do with a clutch. I'm sorry, I failed the world. New truck drivers don't know how to use a clutch as a general rule either. So the orange line there, if you can't read it, not large enough, is automated manual transmissions. Look at how fast that adoption curve is changing right now. We've reached an inflection point where more than half of the new tractors in the industry have automated manual transmissions. Now there is no shift tower. The EPA greenhouse gas phase 2 levels are on the right. We put the trend lines in using all 10 years. If you say, Dave, that line's pretty conservative, that's fine. We'll let you take the more aggressive route. The obvious thing is it's going up rapidly. I think the OEM moving the fastest right now, Volvo, is over 80% automated transmissions in their new products. What I found real interesting, some of you were at the National Private Truck Carrier Council this year. Did you sit in on some of the breakfast sessions? They had roundtable discussions. I was in the one talking about automated transmissions, and the guy said, fleet owner, it's become such an issue that we recently had a driver we needed to get their truck in and do some PM work for at least a day or two. So we said, sorry, we're going to hold your truck. We're going to put you in this one today. They took one look inside the door, saw the shift tower, and said, I think I need a sick day today. I'm going home. Slammed the door and left. So they're not interested in driving something with a manual transmission. They'd rather take a sick day and walk away than try to drive it. So it's a very big trend that's going on. No problem meeting those levels. The green line would be a Allison TC10, a fully automatic transmission. And there are just not a lot of those out there, so that trend line doesn't quite meet up yet. Let's talk about tire pressure systems. Here's another one where the adoption curve is going up dramatically. A very vertical climb right now for tire pressure inflation systems on trailers. Saw it in the plant yesterday, the vast majority of them. I don't know what your percentage is right now. Do you know off the top of your head? More than 50? Okay. And overall, when you consider the big generic trailers, yeah, that's definitely the trend. It's well beyond 50%, and we need to get to 100% in the near future. So to those of you in that area, it's a good market to be in. When we think about our talk coming up on automation, autonomous vehicles, you've got to know what's going on with the tires if there's no driver watching what's happening with the tractor and trailer. So a lot of these are helping set that stage. For those of you in the realm of tires, I need some help here from my friend at Michelin and others. We're trying to figure out how to do this chart, but here's our data showing adoption of SmartWay duals as the blue line, or wide base tires. So there are things happening, the changes are going on. They're definitely the trend. We haven't figured out a way to do the greenhouse gas phase 2 rules because they change and they've got different bins and whatnot. This is a chart that if you don't have it yet, I can help you get it, that talks about over time the different aerodynamic bins that are part of the future trailers and what would be typical of what's in those bins. For instance, bin 2 would be a high-performing gap reducer. There are, I believe, 3 companies I know of right now that are getting into an emerging technology area. Nose cones go on the trailer, but there are 3 companies developing devices to emerge from the tractor and fill up the gap between the tractor and trailer. One origami folds, one inflates. Those are emerging technology areas. Some of the myths we see is that this is going to cost us big time. Well, done properly, what we've seen is there are fuel economy savings to doing these devices. So if they work like they're supposed to and tested and validated, we're pretty sure we're going to see some significant fuel savings. The compliance does not fall on the fleets, but that doesn't mean the fleet and the dealership won't be heavily involved in that conversation because the OEMs are going to want to steer you into certain packages of equipment. No single technology is mandatory. There's a lot of concern. It was not fun doing after treatment. The whole industry, myself included, lost some hair trying to figure out how to do that. We're still figuring it out. Waste heat recovery scares folks. It's one of those things we need to continue to develop and validate long before we need it. A pre-buy is inevitable. Well, we're all about confidence levels. If the industry truly works together, they're transparent on test results, what's happening, we can avoid a pre-buy. If we're not transparent and we pull things out of the hat at the last hour, yeah, we're going to see pre-buys again. So we've got to work together. That's one of the things we hope to help the industry do. Let's talk about even more emerging technologies. The DOE helped fund, they didn't put out, 4 super trucks with a challenge to become 50% more efficient. What are all the cool engineering things you can do to make a tractor and trailer more efficient? 4 teams came out, and the first one, the Cummins Peterbilt, I believe was introduced to the world about 2 years ago now. And they came out at 10.7 miles per gallon, then Freightliners at 12.5. Volvo and Navistar just came out last June timeframe, I believe it was, May, June. They're already over 12 and 13 with those later development trucks. And there was a lot of use of trailer technologies to get there. TMC meeting this year, that some of the fleets were real excited. We need more programs where tractor OEMs and trailer OEMs actually work together. Our lives would be great if you folks would talk to each other more often than just rather what happens at the kingpin fifth wheel. So probably one of the more cool and weird things is the last one, that Catalyst from Navistar. Actually, that truck, the front air suspension on the steer axle goes down at highway speeds. The back axle of the trailer squats as well, and the suspension on the drive wheels of the tractor inflates a little bit to create a winged aerodynamic shape as it's moving down the highway. There's some cool thoughts on what you can do with technology in the future. And there's a second generation of these trucks now underway. I've heard Dr. B speak before. I'm looking forward to this. I just want to touch briefly on where we see autonomous technologies. The automated technologies that I've talked to you about, transmissions, talking to engines, talking to other vehicles, those are things that are helping move our industry forward. Lane keeping, adaptive cruise control are all enabling technologies that helps move us forward. The platooning becomes the obvious next step. If one truck can do well, 2 and 3 can do better. Dr. B will get into assisted driving and the challenges of whether or not that's actually a real step in this progress or getting to fully autonomous. We think this is a genie that's out of the bottle and not going back in the bottle. 3 examples I'll give you down at the bottom. Most everyone in our industry is familiar with the infamous Otto beer run in Colorado, but there's 3 other ones that haven't been nearly as well publicized. Over on the left bottom corner is a state work truck. We've all been in construction zones. We've seen crash trucks. Would any of you want your kid driving the crash truck? And there's a reason they call it the crash truck. And it has a barrier on the back because people hit it. This company's developed an autonomous crash truck that follows the vehicle that's doing the striping, barreling, whatever. No driver in it. Makes sense, right? Why would anyone want to be in the crash truck? So there are situations like that, or right above it's an autonomous mining truck that's never on a public road. It's in a dangerous situation driving up and down in a strip mine. They've created a vehicle that doesn't even have a cab. It's an autonomous truck. Or Volvo put out the refuse collection truck, just hit the news about a month ago, that actually drives backwards with no driver in it. Normally the driver would be hopping in and out at every driveway to pick up the bins. That's the way apparently they do it in Europe still. It's autonomous. It drives slowly backwards and follows the person through their route so that they can be more efficient. So there are 3 examples of autonomous trucks. Don't have a driver in them. They make sense. They're not threatening. And every one of those things is going to help us learn more about autonomy and what it can do in the future for us. Help us make beer runs. So when we think about this, where are we at today? The best trucks coming off the production line are now cruising past 8, past 9. There's situations of people getting 10 and 11 miles per gallon on a stock truck coming out of the factory today with the right trailer. You start talking about the super truck technologies, it's going to easily get to 11. You start talking about we don't think it's a 4.5 to 10% range. It's less than that because you're not going to be platooning all the time, so the number is probably 3 or 4 over the life of a future truck. Get us up into the 12 mile per gallon, highly autonomous or automated driving. We as a nation can double our fuel economy. So we think our goal is achievable. And to that end, How many of you are aware there's a brand new truck show, one of the largest truck shows in the world in Hanover, Germany, every other year? Those folks are now doing a new truck show in the U.S. at the end of September this year called the NACV, North America Commercial Vehicles. As a lead into that show, NACFE is working with a lot of others in the industry, and we're going to put out there 6 to 10 best-in-class tractor trailers and monitor them every day and report to the world what's going on and how good are trucks and tractors today. We've got sponsors from some major organizations like Shell and Pepsi. There are others of you in the room that are additional sponsors. We're going to announce that in the next week or two, so thank you. We appreciate your support. You're going to see a press release here very soon that'll talk about who the fleets are, maybe talk about their drivers that'll be in it. The exciting part to us, this actually happens right through National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, so we're shooting to get Richard Branson and others involved and really talk about the good things that are going on in our industry. So we're right now seeking fleets and drivers, additional sponsors, and we will have a very large press release down at the NACV show to talk to the world about what's happening. We've got real trucks, real freight, real routes. These people are going about their daily business, have agreed to allow us to put an additional telematic device on there, monitor it, and report to the world on what's happening. So we're excited to be able to tell folks about some of the unreal MPGs. I know one of the driver posts on Facebook, every once in a while he manages to crack a day where he's at 14 miles per gallon. He has no load coming home, he's coming out of the Rockies, whatever, but who would have thought a Class 8 tractor trailer could pull a 14? So with that, these are all the things that NACFE is all about. Do a lot of different kinds of things. We do workshops, state trucking associations. If you've got a state trucking association that's looking for an opportunity to talk about technology and how it may affect their lives, one of the reasons we were able to help Charlie, we help put together a lot of these kinds of events. Call on us, ask us, hey, Dave, can you help us? We're out here in California, Florida, wherever. We've already worked with North Carolina, Ohio, Utah, putting together things. You can follow us online, social media. If you're into social media, NACFE, I run our LinkedIn and Facebook groups so you can see what we've published, where we're going, where our next workshops are at. You can go online to truckingefficiency.org, and here we have just started to populate a new site, runonless.com, that's going to be focused just on that particular event. So with that, Charlie, 5 minutes? 5 minutes of Q&A. Yes, sir. That? One more.
All right. So it says all U.S. trucks is the purple one.
Yes.
It's going down.
It's still suffering from the effects of the after-treatment systems that took away from fuel economy. And it will probably, as we see, bend north here in the next year or two as the numbers start to balance out. So that change was not well received by the industry for good reason. It affected reliability, it affected fuel economy, it greatly impacted the cost of their vehicles. So it's been a nightmare to fleet maintenance managers working with after-treatment vehicles. Does that make sense?
That's clarification, is that's actually 2014 data, and that also incorporates all Class A trucks. So that would be not necessarily something on the open road, that may be a dump truck.
Yeah,
Okay?
correct.
So you got to remember that.
So there are vocational trucks in there, and the blue line is all highway Class 8 tractor trailers. So yes, there's a difference there as well, especially now that we've gotten better at aerodynamics.
Talk a little bit about the tons per mile.
Good question. For those of you that aren't familiar, we get asked frequently, why the heck are you talking about miles per gallon? Because when we go out and talk to fleets, one of their efficiency metrics that virtually every fleet can talk about is miles per gallon. To address trailers, one of the challenges we see is very few fleets can tell you their fuel economy impact of the trailer. They just don't have the telematics and big data system to understand which trailer was with which tractor at what time and gave me what results. The best of the fleets can do that. Most of them aren't there yet. But to your question, that's not the true efficiency metric. The true efficiency metric is used by the railroad industry and others. Ton miles per gallon. How many tons of freight did I move, how far, with that gallon of diesel fuel? We are hopefully going to crack that conversation with Run on Less and start bringing that up conversationally. It'll be interesting to see how long it takes. Big data is changing our lives every day. As these things become more accessible and more fleets can talk about it, we definitely want to bring that in as part of NACFE's vocabulary and talk about that. But to date, there are very few that can talk. How many of you talk ton miles per gallon with a fleet ever? One. So, 1.5. So it's a challenge. It's an obvious place we need to get eventually. We're not there yet. I had another question. Hand, where did I? Yes, sir. I don't know that off the top of my head. I would guess, and it's merely a guess, that the average age of a vehicle in the U.S. is probably between 9 and 11 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you have that dive down there. You're talking 10, 11 years. Yeah, that 9, 10, 11.
And to your point, it's a pretty bizarre curve. I've been in the industry for 30 years since I live here in America's heartland of farms. I know every spring at planting season and every fall at harvest season, I see tractors out there that were produced well before I joined the industry. So there are trucks out there that are well over 30 years old. For an offer for you, if anything I've said today resonates with you in any way, I have flyers. I'm more than happy to give you more than a few of them. If you've got customers that you deal with that said, hey, I'd like to bring some new information to your attention, we'd be glad to help you, partner up with you. Thank you. Appreciate it.